The people who are afraid of making mistakes don't realize that just really limits their ability to be their best self, because basically all the amazing things I know how to do is because I initially screwed it up. Welcome to today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. This one is a little different. The conversation was recorded live with Stripes, an incredible community focused on elevating women in medtech. Instead of me leading the discussion, I was invited to be the guest, and the interviewer, none other than my longtime friend and fellow Stripes board member, Dr. Crystal Simon. We dive into the theme of where grit meets grace, and I share some of my own story from overcoming trauma to leading companies, navigating imposter syndrome, building strong teams, and figuring out what it really means to do it all. I hope you will find it as meaningful to listen to as it was for me to share. So with that, here's my conversation with Crystal, recorded live for Stripes.
What an awesome opportunity to be here with you, Angela.
I'm excited.
And thank you, Kim, for the opportunity as well. It's a pleasure to be part of Stripes. I'm part of the board. I just feel really passionate about giving back to women in medtech and the power that we have when we really come together as peers and mentors to each other and mentees to each other, and what that can do to change the industry and actually improve things for all women and help a lot of patients in the process, which I think inspires a lot of us to be in this industry. Angela is someone that I met many years ago. I won't say the number of years, but I was actually her TA when I was in graduate school, and she was an undergrad. And Angela just really stood out to me as a star student who had already overcome quite a bit in her life, and we'll get to that story in a minute. But she is a shining star. I knew from then that she was going to really be someone, and then we lost touch for, won't say the number of years.
Many years.
Until a couple of years ago. And we actually reconnected through an organization called Chief, which is a networking group for female executives. We talked for probably a couple hours before we pieced it together that we knew each other so many years ago.
Which was really funny, too, because both of us were sitting there thinking, wait, she looks really familiar. But it had been about 15 years, I think, maybe 20 years.
And since then, we've reconnected, and this is the power of women in your network, right?
Yes.
Angela has helped me. I told her my dream was to be part of the advisory board for biomedical engineering at Georgia Tech. And what do you know? I'm already on it, thanks to the connection with her and just that mutual admiration that we have for each other. So what a cool opportunity. She has an amazing story. We'll start with that. So I really want you guys to get her to know her background, because the theme of this is where grit meets grace and how to overcome trauma. So we'll let you open up with a very vulnerable story that we appreciate.
Okay.
Sharing with
Which
us.
story are we starting with?
We're going. How about
which one? It's funny. I was being interviewed earlier today, and the host was also saying, that story. And I said, okay, I started with one, and then I said something else. He's like, no, now I want to talk about this story. So I don't remember which one we were going to start with, so kick me off.
Let's start with the most recent one. It's a 5-year anniversary coming up.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Yes. So in August of 2020, I was the victim of a kidnapping in Atlanta. It was a dating scenario through a dating app. What's interesting is that I had been single for a while, and the CFO, I was COO of a company in Atlanta that I was one of the early employees of. And the CFO said, oh, you need to try this dating app, and you'll love it being an engineer, because you answer all of these questions, and based on the questions, they match you with your perfect person. And that was what the theory was. Unfortunately, I dated someone for a couple of days one week and realized something was off. And so I said, hey, I don't want to date you anymore. Unfortunately, he had already mastered my schedule, and that Saturday I was kidnapped and held hostage for 5 days and escaped on my 45th birthday, actually. So I turned 50 in 2 weeks, I'll go ahead and say. And I will also tell you that while Crystal was my TA, I went back to school at Georgia Tech as a 29-year-old single mom with a special needs 2-year-old. So just because I said I was 50 does not mean that she's older than me. So I will throw that out there. But, one of the things that was really powerful when I, 5 years later, look back at that those 5 days is that I went through so many different emotional states in that period of time, which I think a lot of, especially women, can think of as they go through puberty, maturity, and then, you get close to menopause and that kind of stuff. And I went through moments where I just thought, there's nothing I can do. I can't escape. I'm just going to give in. And other moments where I said, I'm going to fight. And then finally, in the end, I had an opportunity to escape. And I just said, you know what? I don't care what happens. I'm just going to go for it and do it. And I think just reflecting back on that has helped me when I work with other women when they struggle with those different phases of dealing with a challenge, whether it is, like we're going to talk about, layoffs, whether it is challenges in relationships, whether it is challenges of learning how to navigate a boardroom when you might be the only woman in the boardroom, and these types of things, is really understanding that natural progression. And yet at some point, that when you set your mindset on exactly where you want to be, then you have that moment and it's like 5, 4, 3.1, go and do it. And that's what happened.
Yeah. So pretty wild story, and just really appreciate you being so vulnerable with the audience. And so maybe I think, a lot of people actually the motivation for this was that a lot of people in this group have been through layoffs this year, maybe currently going through it. What advice would you give somebody like that that's going through something maybe really tough? What did you learn, and what would you give, kind of advice would you give to people?
I think the reality, when we were talking about this earlier, I said, the thing about layoffs, especially the older you get, when you're younger and you hear about it, the idea of layoffs is like, oh, you must have been a horrible person, or you must have been X, Y, and Z, or you're a failure. And I think regardless at what stage, as humans, we automatically go to that initial moment. I don't want to tell people I'm embarrassed. They'll think that I'm a low performer. I'm not, these things. However, I guarantee the older you get, basically almost everyone around you has been laid off at some point in their lives.
I have been.
Right? I have. And also, there we go. Yeah. There we go. We can all get together on this. And the reality is that if you really get curious and talk to other people who've experienced this, then you start to hear so many stories of resilience and so many stories of people who say, you know what? Now that I look back at it, when I had that moment during a layoff, if you pause in that moment, some people react to a layoff, and what they do is they immediately just try to find the next job. And most of the people that I know that do that actually very much regret it. And the ones that instead pause for a moment and say, okay, let me go out to my A team, my advisors, and say, what am I really good at? What areas do I need to grow in? What areas do I want to grow in? And then navigate what your next opportunity is going to be with those things in mind. And I find that when people use the layoff as a catalyst to actually go and do something that's going to grow them as a human being versus reactionary and just thinking that you have to immediately have whatever job is next, the people who use it as a catalyst, then their future growth and career potential is way beyond what they even thought. And often they say it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And I feel that way for myself with mine.
It gives you time to rethink and readjust. I mean, one of the best things I did probably about 10 years ago was I created a personal brand for myself. So I actually wrote down on a single PowerPoint slide, who am I? What do I stand for? And where do I want to be? Like, what kind of a vision board for myself, I guess you could say. I use it in interviews. I actually send it out to people because I want them to know who I am. Yeah, I'm ambitious.
I love this.
I'm ambitious. I'm brave. I use words like that. And if you don't like that, I'm not your person.
Yep.
And when I'm in situations that I'm not respected or really appreciated for those things, it helps me kind of figure out, is this serving me? Is this serving me? Do I want to be in this situation?
Yeah, I was at a company once, and the leader said, we need you to be less brave and badass. And I was just like, okay, this is absolutely not the place for me. So if that's what you need, I think I'm going to go transition to something else.
And you did?
I absolutely did.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things that I often find as well is that so many of us stay in a job that we're miserable at because the active energy it takes to get a new job or to even think about that feels so paramount that you basically get paralyzed into where you're at.
Right.
And sometimes a layoff or someone telling you, Angela, you should not be yourself. Those are moments that should be wake-up calls to say, a third of our lives is about working.
I know.
Let's do something we love.
I know. It's so true. So you also touched on the power of the A-team. So talk to me about your philosophy.
Yes.
Who's in your circle?
So I am a big believer that you should surround yourself with amazing people that will help you grow. And if you're not in a room where people are constantly inspiring you to grow, like conversations that Crystal and I have had, then you're in the wrong room. And so the idea of the A-team is 3 different categories. And I wrote a blog about it, and we can share that. But it is the team members, or the individuals that you want that are in the boardroom. And these are your individuals who will help mentor you towards career growth and things of that area in the foxhole. And then, oh my gosh, am I going to forget the third one? The locker room, yes. So your cheerleaders or your locker room ones, the foxhole people, or those are your ride or die people, right? And oftentimes I see that people pick mentors and they try and put the mentor in all 3 of those categories. And they go to the same person and they are asking them advice on career. And then they're in a tragedy and they're asking that same person advice about their tragedy or for them to cheer them on in a moment. And we're not all experts in those areas. So instead, be strategic. Literally what I did years ago, and I did a presentation when I was COO of Florence to our women's team about doing this. And I showed photos of the people that were in these quadrants and said, I encourage everyone to go in and think about these. And also think about for yourself, where are you offering this? Because one of the things as women, sometimes we are really bad about feeling as if we're too needy to other people. And if instead we're also giving back in areas that we love to give back, then when we need something, then we realize that when someone asks me for help and I'm able to give it to them, I love it. I feel like it inspires me. It's really doing more for me than it is for them.
Right.
And if you realize that, then when you need to ask somebody else for help, if you don't ask them, you're taking away that opportunity for them to give you that gift.
Yeah. So if you were going through a career transition, how would you leverage these people in each of the 3 buckets?
Oh, and I did this back in
Let's
October.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I was COO of a software company that was running out of money and had a board member who also had no desire to worry about culture or people. And so we laid off 25% of the company, and I was part of that. And so at first, immediately was that day. Okay, come on, that day. At first, I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm so mad. How am I going to pay my bills? I'm single. I'm the only person. I have a special needs daughter. And then I immediately pivoted and said, okay, I'm going to reach out to these people, the ones that, and it was not, I did not initially just reach out to the board members on my A-team, okay? I originally reached out to the foxhole.
Foxhole, for sure.
Yep. I went
100%.
straight to the foxhole and I said, okay, this sucks. Can you will you go out to dinner with me? Will you make sure that I don't stay in my pajamas and stay in bed with, whatever 12-inch or what bigger than 12-inch extra large pizza and a can of ice cream. Yeah, make sure I don't do that. So I went to the foxhole people first, okay? And I was vulnerable with them. And those are your ride or die people. They will love you no matter what. And then I went to the boardroom next. Because then what I wanted to do is I wanted to be very strategic about what my next move was going to be. And I had a couple of opportunities of things to do. And I, once again, believe you should be very thoughtful about this because it takes a lot of energy to start a new job. So, and to get ingrained in that. So I went to the boardroom and we talked through what I had already accomplished in my career and where I wanted to go next. And one of those boardroom members was trying to recruit me to my current job, which is running Biolosity, which is a program out of Georgia Tech and Emory. And I don't remember if I've told you this. I've only told a couple of people this.
Juicy. I can't wait.
Yeah. I had imposter syndrome with it, right? Because it is running this program out of Georgia Tech and Emory that's commercialization. And I've built a big brand at Georgia Tech. And I thought, what if I take this job and they realize I can't do it? And they're like, never mind. She's not as great as we thought. And so I was considering it. And then next what I did is I went to the locker room and talked to the people. And the people who reminded me of the hard things I'd done in the past reminded me of my own philosophy of you just surround yourself with a team. You know, your locker room is your team. And they said, you're not going to do this role all by yourself. You know how to surround yourself with amazing people, bring amazing people in. You don't have to know how to do everything. You just surround yourself with the people that excel and their superpowers align with yours, and that's how you can make it happen. So that's how I navigated those three areas.
That's solid. I heard some of the same advice, and I've hopefully followed it, although it's never perfect. But they say, you know, let yourself process through the layoff.
Yes.
Don't just go out there looking for jobs right away because you're still a little bitter. You may be all over the place, not really knowing what you're going to do. You can actually turn people off.
Yeah.
People want to support you when you're in a very positive light. They don't necessarily want to recommend you if they think you're going to be venting or kind of negative or, you know, so definitely give yourself grace and time. And, you know, because you can't kind of burn some bridges or approach people in a way that maybe you're not showing up at your best self in that moment. And I think it's important. Just give yourself time to process that.
Yeah, I love the bitter comment about it because I see that a lot in people. They get swallowed up by being angry because, and here's the deal. If something's outside of your locus of control, burning energy, being really furious about it, and then talking incessantly about it to everyone else does no benefit at all. That is the exact opposite of grace for yourself or the rest of the world around you, right? And it definitely is not grit. Grit is being brave enough to go to your advisors and ask for transparent feedback. Grit is taking a step back. And I can even think in that situation, there are things that as a leader now, I would do differently in leading. And I think that's one of the things is grit. And then the grace in a layoff is really understanding that it doesn't mean you're a bad human.
Personal.
It's not personal, right? It is business, absolutely.
Yep. And a lot of times we blame ourselves.
Yes.
And we think we did something wrong. And really, you know, that is a layoff where it's just literally a business decision. Right?
Well, and also so, if we have ego issues, and then we think everyone else thinks we did something wrong. So then we have to then trash whatever organization it was to make sure everyone understands it wasn't
our fault. It wasn't anything we did. Yeah, I know.
Like, really, what did
and they're not going to recommend you. These people still work there. They're not going to want to put you in front of people.
Exactly. So don't go that path. Instead, use the opportunity to pause. And I think we're all building a legacy. Okay. And so if we use that opportunity to pause and think, okay, what do I want the next step of my legacy to be? And it definitely is not trashing a whole bunch of people that brings no value. It's instead trying to think of what the next partnership that's going to be a great partnership will be.
You touched on imposter syndrome. We got to get there.
Yes.
So you love Winston Churchill. What do you think about his mentality on imposter syndrome?
Yeah, there's this, one of my favorite quotes is Winston Churchill, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's something like in your 20s, you're worried about what everyone thinks about you, right? And then in the 40s, you kind of stop worrying about it. And then in your 60s, you realize no one was actually thinking about you anyways. And I love this now. When I was younger, I would go into board. I was also on the BME advisory board when I was relatively new out of college. And I often thought, I think these people probably think I don't deserve to be here, right? And I was so worried about that. And then I would be afraid to speak up in the board meetings and afraid to make a point because I thought, what if I say something they think is stupid, right? And then years later, when I was chair of the BME External Advisory Board, and now I'm on the College of Engineering Advisory Board, and I'm also on the board to the president at Georgia Tech. And I love when people speak up. And I suddenly realized, you know what? I'm not thinking about them in any negative way at all. I'm just like, thank you, somebody else spoke up. And so it is that idea that once I stopped worrying about what everyone else was thinking about me, and I just wanted to be curious and get to know humans as humans, then my whole life changed. All that said, of course, I'm still vulnerable. With this last job, I had this moment of, wait, what if they realize I'm not good enough, right? And so that's going back to wise counsel and working through that and not staying stuck in there or allowing it to paralyze you.
Yep. So, okay, talk me through a moment where you're sitting in a meeting and you're like, man, I really don't agree with what's going on here. Or maybe I'm not sure, like I want to speak up, but I'm not exactly sure I'm right. What goes through your mind and how do you convince yourself it's okay?
Well, when I was younger, what I would do is I would say nothing. Or I would come out very abrasively. Right?
Because you overthink it and then you're like,
exactly. I would like work all of this magic in my head and have this perfect scenario and then throw it out into the world.
And then you're like awkward.
Yeah. And there's silence and everyone's eyes are big, you know. And so I don't do that anymore. Now I don't overthink it. If an idea comes to my head, I say, okay, I have an idea. I haven't worked through it in my head. It's a brand new idea. I just want to throw it out on the wall and see if this resonates with anyone. And we've talked a little bit about not having disclaimers or things like that. But this is a little different. This is being honest and transparent because it is a brand new idea. I haven't thought it through strategically. And yet I want to throw it out because when you say it out and you put it out into the ether, you allow other people to then add on to it. And that's how you get collaborative workplaces. That's how you begin to work through conflict. That's how you also encourage the younger, especially being an executive now. You know, I've been a multi-time COO and I now run this program. When I do that, then I'm modeling it to the other people that this is okay to do. And I love that because then I get those, sometimes the more quiet people, it encourages them to speak up because they don't have to feel as if they have to say the perfect thing.
And what happens if you're wrong?
If you're wrong, then you know what? It's great. It's actually great if you're wrong and you're a leader and you then hear something else and then you say, you know what? I'm wrong. Like, I love what you just said. Totally contradictory. Didn't even think about it. Thank you for adding that.
100%.
And the thing is that it's like a gift. If I'm in a meeting and I throw out an idea and someone on my team says something, I realize, wow, I was completely wrong. The best thing I can do for the culture is to look at them and say, you know what? I was completely wrong. Thank you for sharing that. And that team member trusts me now. That team member also realizes it's okay to say something and perhaps it not be the best solution in the end.
Right. I think a lot of us get promoted because we're really good at our job. And that first promotion is like, man, you know, just repeat. You think you have to like repeat what you did and teach other people to do it exactly the way that you do it. And you have to be so perfect because that's how you got promoted in the first place. And I tell you, a lot of people's first manager job, including mine, I mean, I was horrible. Like people said I was intimidating and, you know, I really thought I had to know it all and be the perfect leader and say the right thing at all times and never admit a mistake because like I had to be so buttoned up. And my 360s were terrible, like absolutely terrible. And then I learned to be more vulnerable and to admit mistakes and to just be okay with not knowing everything and saying, hey, you're the expert on this. And people felt so much more empowered. They wanted to work with me. So, man, we learn the most when we make mistakes, don't we?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I say this all the time. I feel bad for people who are really still terrified to make mistakes because all the best life lessons I've learned and leadership lessons I've learned come through mistakes that I've made. In fact, I had a people and culture individual who, and actually I can say who it is because we've talked about it. She interviewed me on my podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Gia Ganesh, and she was early on at Florence, and she was one of those individuals that really overthought everything. She was so terrified to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And so I bought her these socks that is a rocket ship, and it says, on my way to my next big mistake or something like that. And I put it on her desk.
Oh, I love that.
And then what's funny is the next week I had this little Post-it, which actually I think the Post-it's down in my workout gym. And she had made some mistake on something, and maybe it cost the company like $15,000 or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But she put a Post-it on it. She put it on my desk. And she's like, okay, you asked for it. Here's my first mistake.
Yeah.
And I kept that Post-it. And I kept it because I just was so happy that she was willing to then come and bring it to me versus trying to cover it up.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important.
Agree.
When you as a leader
Agree.
show that you make mistakes, and you say it out loud to people.
Absolutely.
Then they realize, oh, Angela's not perfect. She made a mistake, and she's saying it out loud so that we can all workshop how to fix it. So if I make a mistake, I can do the same thing because, I'm like...
Right. And then people are more willing to come to you and say, I don't know how to do this.
Exactly.
Versus try to fake it. And then here you are months later and you're like, oh my Lord.
Oh yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite stories is early on in Florence. I was in the room and we just hired someone new in marketing. I knew nothing about marketing at the time. I know a little bit more now, not as much as Crystal does. And this marketing team member was walking through some acronyms and he was telling some story and I didn't understand anything he was saying. And the guys in the room were all shaking their head. And finally I paused. I said, wait, what does that even mean? And then two of the other guys were like, yeah, what does that mean? And I stopped the meeting and I looked at them and I said, you guys all suck. Because every single one of you were shaking your head like you understood and you didn't understand. And because I was willing to be vulnerable and say I didn't understand, then suddenly everyone in the room was able to pause and fully understand what we were working on versus what happens in the other instance is you think you've done this great presentation, everyone's shaking their head like they understand, right? And then a week later, no one's actually accomplishing what you talked about and you're wondering why. Well, it could be that there were people in the room who didn't understand what you were trying to do, but they were afraid to bring it up. So when you can, as an executive, be the person that says, oh, wait, what does that acronym even mean?
Right. Right.
Then you open that up for other people to do the same.
Yep. I want to take it back to something you said earlier about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method.
Yes,
so break it down for the audience.
Yeah. So that's a Mel Robbins thing, right? And when we talk about mindset, we oftentimes, and sometimes I hate saying we, so I'm just going to go back to the I statements, okay? If I'm not in a proper mindset, I can talk myself out of everything. Actually, I talked myself out of riding my bike this morning. No. It was a really bad decision. I should have used this method. I was like, oh, my pillow feels so good. So I'm going to let you know I did that. But the really Mel Robbins, when she talks about this, it's really it's that 5-second, just decide you're going to do something. And then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it. And stop the overthinking that we have a habit of doing. That once again, we get to paralyzing ourselves, holding ourselves back, keeping ourselves in bed when we should be riding the bike, that kind of thing. But
I forgive you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
That is a really good tip. I use that too. I mean, workouts, it works great. And you don't want to get out of bed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You just get up. No turning back. It also works if you're in a boardroom and you need to say something and you're afraid to say it. And I have been there. I'm sitting there and my stomach's in knots. And I'm like, do I say something? Do I not say something? And then you're just like, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What do you guys think about this opportunity that we may have? I feel like, too, if we overthink it, you over-engineer the statement in your brain, and then it doesn't come out as conversational. It just comes out as strange, and then you stick out like a sore thumb, and you once again get those deer in the head. We sabotage ourselves. Yep. So you do executive coaching. Yep. What are some of the typical things that you're coaching folks on? A lot of times, it depends on if I'm working with an individual or with a team or a company. Okay, so I'll talk about individual first. I do a lot of personal branding. You were talking about your brand, and we've both mapped out our brand. I think everyone on this call, you should work towards building what your personal brand is, and then learning the areas you want to grow in with it, and being really consistent to that. And so I do a lot of that, and part of that too. For example, with personal branding, some of these I do a lot with women who are wanting to get into executive roles, and they feel as if they're not being heard in the room or they're being talked over or something like that. So one of the exercises that I'll do with them is we'll record some of their meetings and then sit back and I'll watch them and help them understand how sometimes their body language, or a lot of times individuals will finish a statement with an upraised voice
and it sounds like a question. And actually,
like you just did.
Like I just did on purpose. And it's so annoying too. I can't do it. But there's actually research that shows that doctors who finish sentences with that, what sounds like a question mark at the end, that raised voice instead of a statement at the end, they have higher malpractice claims than the others because their patients don't trust them as much. And so I'll work with women to help them also identify some of those things that they're doing. So that's on the personal end. Now, on company end, I work with a lot of startups and help them navigate what their superpowers of the team they currently have and what the next hires need to be to build a solid foundation to move forward. And then finally, one of my favorite is to work on culture with teams and conflict resolution.
Oh, I was going there.
I love conflict. I love conflict resolution. I'm very passionate about it. And it's really amazing to work with a team and see them learn how to have and deal with healthy conflict in the organization, because it can really take a culture that sucks and turn it into something powerful and really turn a company that's average into one that is really what I would venture to say legendary.
Yep. And a lot of that's based on your Seeing Humans as Humans theme,
Yes.
which you cover quite a bit in the Badass Leaders podcast. So we'll have
Yes.
to get folks a link to that so
Yes.
they can follow along. But what inspired you for the Humans as Humans
You
theory,
know,
and how do you implement it?
yeah, one of the things is when I was born and raised into a very abusive childhood. I was the only one. I was the female. I was the only one being abused. My brothers were not. Child Protective Services was sent. She's fine, until finally something happened and it couldn't be covered up. And so throughout the process, when I was learning how to navigate the world as an abused child, I still always thought there are good people out there. Okay. So I've always went through the world thinking that, but I didn't really understand the humans as humans until I was in treatment for the kidnapping. So I was kidnapped, held hostage, and I escaped. And then this was August of 2020, so COVID time. And I went to North Carolina for 4 months. I was still COO of the company, running the company for 4 months. I stayed, I moved back to Atlanta, sold my old place, never went back, sold my car, moved to a new place, and continued running the company for another 3 months until we closed our Series C. And we did that. I initially started with a sabbatical off, and then I ended up transitioning out of the company and spent 6 months in residential treatment. Now, I don't want any of the ladies on this call to ever have any of this happen to you, but I will tell you, in that period of time, I met people with so many different challenges, so many different backgrounds, and I had time, so I got to know them as human beings. And as I started doing that, I really realized, wow, there is so much power in all these individuals. And they could be addicts. They were, individuals for grief, for PTSD, for eating disorders. It didn't matter what it was. There were some amazing humans. And so I tied that along with, I had before this read the book Culture Map, which I highly recommend. If you have not read it, definitely read it. And it really talks about how you get to know how people behave in different cultures differently. I use the example when I was running Florence, we had a quality assurance team in Belgrade, and we had another team in La Paz, Bolivia. And I had hired a new product manager, and I heard there was some ruffles going on between these teams. They were not fans of each other. And so we had a Zoom meeting. I made everyone turn their cameras on. And I said, look, here's the deal. We're not going to talk about work. I want everyone to go around and tell us about who you are. Like, what are your hobbies? What do you love to do? Your family? What? So we did that. And then, because I had researched their cultures, I said, okay, well, in Belgrade, this is quality assurance for software. I said, in Belgrade, when you see a piece of code and it has a bug in it, Belgrade, you say, this is wrong. And I said to the Belgrade team, I said, in Bolivia, if you say that like that, it is the equivalent to them as you're saying they're stupid. And then I said, now the Bolivia team, I understand in your culture, this word and the abrasiveness of the personality seems this way to you. However, all they're really just saying is that we have a bug in the code. And it was amazing to see that team after that, how they suddenly started to understand each other, see humans as humans. And then once again, that's how you can work through conflict as well.
Yeah. I had some great advice from a senior leader one time who said, really with conflict, and he got me to believe the best in people too.
Yes.
And he just said, it really boils down to two things: different information or different assumptions. And you just have to figure out which one it is.
Yes.
So they're making assumptions, right? I think that's probably the most common time. And so I think if we come at it just very directly, something's going on here, the worst part I think is to let it fester.
Yep.
And not address the conflict, because people just keep doing the same thing and pissing each other off, for, lack of a better term.
Oftentimes the conflict is not what we think it is.
Yeah.
Right? So in this example, the bugs weren't really the problem, right? It's just that we naturally as humans react in the same way we've been raised, in the same environment we're used to. So when something feels abrasive in that way, then we have this physiological response to it, and we tie it to an instance. So we tie it to the bugs. But in the reality, it is our human nature and our human reaction to it. And so sometimes what I will tell people is that really start to sit in your body and pause for a moment and say, what are you feeling in your body? Are you feeling that your stomach's in knots? Are you feeling something heavy on your chest? Are you feeling, and identifying those instances?
Yeah.
And then realize that's something that's happening in your body.
Yeah.
And that other person is not necessarily causing it, and they don't intend it. They probably have the same thing going on in their body, right? So pausing and being curious about what the actual interaction needs to be is a much healthier way.
Yeah. Actually, something I learned from Chief, I watched a webinar, and they say the first thing you should do is make yourself feel safe. Remind yourself you're in a safe environment, you're breathing, focus on your breath for a minute, because I think we start to feel threatened when there's a conflict. And they say put your both feet on the floor and just feel that for a second, because what's actually going on is your fight or flight response.
Yep.
And you're triggered and you just don't feel safe, and that's why you react poorly. So I think that's a good tip that I try to practice, not as often as I should, but
well, the feet on the ground. Another one is touching your fingertips. And this, when you do the fingertip thing, you can do it under a table. I did this once when I was in California. I worked with a senior executive who liked to yell a lot. And actually, I realized...
You got to talk about that guy.
Yeah, I realized in a conversation with him, I thought, why? I mean, I've had people yell at me my whole life. Why is he triggering me so much? And I realized he was just reminding me of my father, right? And here I was 46 or 7 at the time. And so what I did in one meeting was exactly that. I put my feet, and then I had my hands under the table, but I started doing this. It was very grounding. Yeah. And I took deep breaths, and I was like, he is not your father. And he also is just a brilliant man. He really doesn't think you're stupid, or if he does, who cares? Because you're not stupid. And it was game changing. And also in our interactions, and then in the way that I learned to deal with conflict with him, then we really had the opportunity to become curious about what was really driving that in him. And I realized, when I started asking him questions as he was berating me, I paused. And I want to be very clear. It's never acceptable to just take being berated at, right? But there are ways you can diffuse it, and you can take control of the situation.
Ooh, got to go for that.
Yeah. And one of those is pausing and saying, I see that you're really passionate about this. Let's dig in a little bit more. I want to be curious. And what is it? And you start doing your 5 whys. Mm-hmm. People love to, look
Tell
at me.
me more.
I'm talking.
Tell me
People
more.
People love to talk about themselves. And tell me more is my favorite phrase to say. Because then when you do that, especially to someone who's amped up that way, then their nervous system starts to relax. Mm-hmm. And they suddenly think, wait, Crystal really wants to know what this is. And I think it's a place of power when you're the one asking the questions and being curious and encouraging them to share that. And then you sit and you can watch them just
disarm.
Calm down in front of you, right? And then it is a natural reaction for them to then reciprocate back. And that is the dynamic you want to get to as quickly as possible. So the more you practice that, the faster you will de-escalate those situations, have your own power in them, and accomplish great goals.
Love it. Kim, how are we doing over there? Do we have questions from the audience? Now would be a good time to pause and see what folks want to know.
Audience question. How do you do it all?
Well, a couple of things. One, I surround myself with some amazing people. I have Katie on my team, who is the senior client relations manager and the executive producer of the podcast. And she is absolutely amazing. I've empowered her to run everything for that. And I just show up and have great conversations with people. And I have people like that in my life that it is growing her career and her area of expertise as well. And it's allowing me to do what I do really well. So instead of me thinking I need to be a control freak and do everything myself, I really aim to surround myself with amazing people. I also, I do say no to a lot of things because I love the book Boundaries, where Cloud and Townsend say no is a complete sentence. My version of it is everything you say yes to means you're saying no to something else. And so earlier on in my career, when I was mentoring young females, I would try and get them to understand this no is a complete sentence. And that's hard for people. They were like, I can't say no like that. And I said, okay, think about it this way. Everything you say yes to means you're saying no to something else. So choose your yeses wisely. And I love thinking about it that way because it feels less abrasive. It's just like, you know what? Okay, I can't do this because if I do this, I'm not going to be able to accomplish this. And also I don't get a lot of sleep.
It goes back to, I think, your personal brand. And man, we've really
Yes.
plugged that. We didn't plan on it. But once you know your personal brand and what drives you and what's serving you, it helps you figure out what's not serving you. And I revisit this when I'm going through tough times. I'll revisit it. When I'm having a lot of stress, the other thing I do is I do journaling. So, you know, there's times where I just feel myself going negative and I remind myself 15 minutes in the morning, what am I grateful for? What am I going to accomplish today? And it really helps, when you're going into meetings, you're dealing with some person you don't want to deal with. I'm like, man, I get to figure out why this person is reacting this way. I can't wait to do that today.
I'm excited.
It changes everything. It changes everything.
You know, speaking of what you just said about get to, so I love Simon Sinek. I really want him on my podcast one day. So if anyone has any, anyways.
She's very ambitious. If you don't ask for it, you don't get it.
Exactly. So one of the things that in one of his episodes is he was talking about watching the Olympics. And when the news broadcasters would interview the athletes, they would ask, were you nervous before this event? And repeatedly, the athletes kept saying, I was excited. I heard that. And I was just like, oh, wait. And actually, the two physiological feelings are the same. But when you say, I'm excited about this opportunity versus I'm nervous.
Yes.
When you say I'm nervous, even me just saying that right now, I can feel my stomach getting up in knots. You say I'm excited, then you get this energized. It's like an endorphin that goes through you. And so there's the mindset. The other thing is my personal brand is be brave, be badass. And what that means is I strongly believe every individual, team, organization, culture has their own badass. It is the absolute best that they can be. And it is the best that they can be on that day.
Yeah.
Okay. And so going back to how do I do all these things, I don't crush everything that I do. I'm trying to go back and get back in shape and do another half Ironman. And the other day, my run, I just posted a video that said my run is a 4-letter word because it's walk. And I was supposed to stay. Yes. And I was supposed to stay in a heart rate zone. And so I said, okay, you know what? The best I can do today is this walk at this heart rate zone at this pace. And the brave part is that I believe a lot of us just aren't brave enough to reach our badass for that day. And that's what we need to do. And so that really helps me stay grounded and give myself grace and mercy for the days that I struggle when that run is a 4-letter word.
And she's training for another Ironman.
Half Ironman. I did 6 Ironmans. I'm not sure we'll ever do another Ironman, but I did get talked into doing a half Ironman. We'll see how that goes in May.
I have faith in you.
Thank you.
Audience question. How did you start your journey into coaching?
Well, I will say that the journey into coaching was very much a product market fit on accident moment. I never intended to begin leadership coaching, personal coaching, or any of that, I started having people come to me and say things like, wow, your brand is so strong and solid. How did you do it? Can you help me do it? Or you navigate the boardroom with so much grace. I'm a really big proponent of being a woman in leadership.
Yes.
And not trying to fill a role of a man or something like that, right? And so I actually started having people come to me and saying, can I work with you? And at first it was via mentoring, and I did a lot of free mentoring. And then over time, once again, everything you say yes to means you're saying no to something else. And so I then converted it away from free mentoring towards executive coaching, personal brand coaching, and that. And so very much the same. We also help individuals who are starting their podcast produce their podcast. And we never intended to do that. It's just that we have done it so well that now we have people coming to us. So I think it was also when you think about listening to your A team and they start calling out things that you do really well and leaning into those really helped me get into coaching. And I love it when I see someone that I've been working with and then I see them grow. I mean, it literally can bring tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
Is the greatest gift.
Yes. We got to go back to the comment about women leading as women.
Yes.
And what that means to you.
Yes. So earlier on in my career, I'm an engineer, right? So, and I also grew up with brothers. And so I've been in this male dominated world my entire life. And I will say that early on, I had some female leaders who really truly felt like there was only one seat for a woman in certain situations. And I remember actually, I was in surgery. I was proctoring a surgery when I was at Medtronic, and it was a female electrophysiologist. And she was just so harsh and abrasive. And it was very clear that she was trying to fulfill the epitome, like what she thought a man would. Okay.
Yep.
And I've seen that happen so many times. And instead, actually, there was an episode. I will tell you the coolest thing. So when you listen to my podcast, there's an episode. I meant to look up the episode number, but it is the episode with, oh my gosh, her name is going to come to me in just a second. So it is a transgender woman. She is absolutely brilliant. She graduated from Georgia Tech as a man, and then was at the forefront. So it's Kathleen Quigley at the forefront of the internet. I mean, I love the episode. It's so nerdy. And she actually they recently got an Emmy. So there's such thing as technology Emmys. And she was on the team with Broadcom that invented the ability to stream TV video over cable. So that's how we actually have like what we're doing now, right? Is all possible for that. Anyways, she goes through life as a male. She becomes very, successful, a strong leader. And I believe she transitioned in her early 60s. And she served on boards at Georgia Tech and all of these things, right? And then when she transitioned, she kind of pulled back from everything. And I have to give huge kudos to Raheem, who is now the Dean of College of Engineering at Georgia Tech. He was the chair of the Department of, I believe, Electrical and Computer Engineering. And she decided she wanted to get back involved. And she went to him and said, hey, here's this thing, I transitioned. And he was like, no problem. She even went back to Georgia Tech and got her name changed on her diploma too. So then she's an expert in her field. She does expert witness stuff. And she told me, I asked her, I said, okay, I know, and she now serves on the College of Engineering board with me, and she's amazing. I said, I know you as a leader, as a woman. And I said, what was that difference? And she said, when I was a man and I was leading, I love this. When I was a man, I was leading, and I would come into the room and I would say, this is what we're going to do. She said, everyone, they just did it. No one questioned me. No one did anything or tried to, talk over me or anything like that. She said, then when I transitioned, I was leading teams and I tried doing the same thing and no one listened to me. And she said, I remember one time, the first time I was sitting there and I said an idea and then a man said it afterwards, the exact same thing. And they listened to him and she was just like, what? And I've never heard anyone who's led in both
No, that's
to
amazing.
experience that, which is so powerful. And what she said to me that I love, and it's something that I innately have done, and I think I learned it through growing up with such severe abuse, but it was the idea that of being collaborative. And instead, when you're bringing in ideas, build off of other people's ideas as well, not get to give them just the credit, right? But to show a collaborative approach. And if you are a woman in a room and another woman says something and people ignore it and then listen when a guy says something, then you should be the woman that says, well, wait, didn't Crystal just say that a minute ago? But I think that I love diversity. I think that the organizations, teams, everything, they can grow from experiences from all walks of life. And we don't have to be something else, right?
It's our strength. We shouldn't suppress it. Like, we are better in some ways.
I mean, I think we're pretty badass, but
better in some really measurable ways. And the more that we suppress our own leadership and the way that we lead, like, we're actually doing a disservice to each other. We're doing a disservice to the organizations we're in. And so it's just, I completely agree with that. Like, we should not try to be.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was thinking about is that oftentimes the thing that I love to see is excellent, like amazing female leaders are really good at bringing the quiet people into the conversation and really identifying that. And by doing that, you're actually totally improving the outcome of the entire meeting because you're adding more voices to it. And that quiet person could be a man in the corner of the room or something like that.
Yeah.
I also purposely set myself at the table where I'll be in the middle of the conversation.
Yes.
In fact, this just happened. I had lunch on Monday with this Korean team. So these 5 Korean men and then me. And they were first going to let me sit in this corner seat. And I just said, no, I'm going to sit in this seat so that I can interact with the whole conversation. And so they all shifted over and let me sit in the middle seat.
Yeah. You should never, when you walk into a room, don't ever take the seat in the corner. No. Oh my gosh, don't ever do that.
No,
I make people scoot over. I'm like,
oh,
there's some room here. And I make people scoot over. And we should encourage other people. I've called out other women like, no, you're coming to this table, so we should have the confidence and we should not allow others to not feel like they have a seat at the table because you're in the room.
Right. And I had one moment of pause, right? Because we're trying to collaborate with this Korean university at Georgia Tech and Emory, my program. And also cultures are different. And I wanted to be very respectful of their culture. And yet I needed to be able to be involved in the entire conversation. So that's why I just said out loud, I'm gonna sit here so I can hear everyone very well and collaborate in the conversation. And they understood my motive was to be involved as much as I could.
How's it going? I saw a question maybe from Yasmin.
Audience question. Thinking of the boardroom, the locker room, and the foxhole, what do you do when these positions are occupied by people that you work with, but you leave that job and lose contact? How do you rebuild your A-team?
Oh, wow. I'm sorry. And your name was Jasmine?
Jasmine.
Yes.
Jasmine.
Yes.
With a Y.
Yes. That is a great question. And also a great thing. First off, everyone hear that right now. And if you resonate with that, that means that your homework this week and this weekend and next week is to find people in those categories that are not isolated in one area of your life. And that is really important. Okay, the second thing I will say is one, I would challenge whether or not you can actually collaborate with those people again, or if you're selling yourself short by thinking that you can't. Because oftentimes, if you reach out to some of those people, especially if they're boardroom people or the locker room, or actually any of those, so Foxhole as well, if you just say, hey, I'm really excited about this next phase of my life. When I worked with you in this organization, I admired this thing. Can we just go have coffee so I can understand from you, what do you think that you see in me that I should really make sure I harness in my next opportunity? And you would be surprised the people that if they know you want to meet with them and you want to hang out with them in this interim, it's not to bash and trash whatever company or the culture or whatever. And that also goes to your personal brand, okay? So when people get to know your personal brand and understand that's not your personality, then they're more willing to do that. The second thing I would do is one struggle that I think people will do is they only reach out in times of need, and they don't build their LinkedIn. They don't build their references.
Yeah.
They don't spend time to have random coffee conversations with stuff. So I think it's also, I would encourage you to be brave and maybe go back and look through your LinkedIn, look through people you haven't connected and reach out to them and say, hey, I would love to have coffee. I'm thinking through the next great adventure of my life. I've been watching you do X, Y, and Z. Would you be interested in collaborating with me to walk through this? And you'd be surprised how many people would say yes. And then when you build those, really foster those relationships. So the people that I have in mind are, I also have people that specifically in my boardroom who I know will absolutely tell me, Angela, that is a horrible idea. I actually had a phone call with someone earlier this week, and I thought something was a great idea. I was really excited. And he comes all prepared and lists all the reasons. And I'm like, okay, never mind. We're not going to do that. That was a really bad idea. So that would be my thought. And also thanking people when someone gives you words that are maybe hard to hear but are truthful, that means they're being really brave, and thanking them for that feedback. And I like to say, I bet that was really hard for you to tell me. I am so grateful you gave that gift of feedback to me, because it's really going to help me in my future life. So Jasmine, I'm not sure if that helps, but I want you to know that we're cheering for you.
You got a heart emoji.
Oh my God, I do have to say this. You just said this. So one of the things when I was growing up, the people calling Child Protective Services were my two aunts. And one of my aunts, she's since passed by cancer. But one of the earliest things I remember her saying to me, because she was the only daughter with 3 boys, and she ended up getting architect, and I was the only daughter with 3 brothers. And she said, we girls have to stick together.
No.
And I'm going to go teary-eyed. I haven't heard that phrase since she passed away about, 7-8 years ago. But yeah, I remember hearing that. One of the earliest encouragements I ever heard from another woman is, we girls have to stick together.
Yeah. There you go. We'll drop the mic on that. Thank you, Stripes.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.